Welcome also from my side to this great session. I think we have now how certification is making an impact, because that's what we are interested in, making an impact, bringing our part in the transformation. And we have 4 fantastic speakers today, and we are starting with an impulse from Thomas Kraubitz, partner in Buro Happold first, but beside him we have Rolf Demmler, director of SoftGrid from Shanghai with us. It's already evening in Shanghai. Hi, Rolf. And we have also Robert Smodiš, product manager in Murexin from Slovenia with us. Hello, Robert. And Richard Teichmann from, I don't know where you are right now, in Vienna? I think in Vienna.
I'm in the Alps, actually.
Okay, also good. And Richard is CEO of Teichmann and Compagnons Property Networks, so from developer investment side. We have an impulse today looking for transformation, because like I said, that's what we are interested in, driving the transformation in Europe. And for that, Buro Happold has done a comparison between different certification schemes, between the DGNB, the LEED, and the BREEAM scheme, but not only the scheme we have today or we had in the past, also looking to the future, what's in for the future, what's in for the future questions. And Thomas, I'm really thrilled to hear what's in this study, and I think we would like to give you 10 minutes for a brief overview, and I'm sure the study is also available somewhere in the net. You will tell us where.
Yeah, thanks so much for the invitation. And we're gonna use 10 minutes to give you a brief overview on that study. And it will be available online, and we hopefully have it on the DGNB webpage, but also on some of the Partner Green Building Council web pages, on the Buro Happold webpage. So it's going to be there quite soon. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I can already start. Yeah. So first of all, we always get asked for, as Buro Happold consultants, what certification scheme should we use or what's relevant and so on. So that was a very good opportunity to really review the schemes, not to compare one with the other one, but to really look on how they all contribute to the goals and ambitions we have in Europe. So I have a few slides, and just, won't take long, but give you an overview. So as Buro Happold, we have 3,500 engineers working globally. We have about 500 in Europe in different locations. So having a study that's focusing around Europe and the certification schemes that are relevant in Europe is very close to our heart, and thus helped us to really bring all that expertise together. What we do in our day-to-day life is to look at all the different aspects that have to do more or less with sustainability. And we're doing a lot of other engineering components as well that you're not traditionally connecting to sustainability, but at the end it does. We're also helping to certify and looking at future. We're trying to future-proof, and that's all of what we want to do. That's just a core part of our teams that was involved in the report reviewing and so on, and many more. And also want to use that opportunity. Maybe it's also you joining in for our team. So we have a few spots, and would be great to hear from you if that is of interest to you. So on the report itself. So we first looked at drivers. And obviously, there are many drivers we have out there that we would like to push a bit more and to make them available in all the projects that we are engaged in. And, some like UN development goals, sustainable development goals, so all of them, so we looked at those as kind of an overarching topic. But then we also, raised the question on how do building certification advance a sustainable future for the overall building sector in Europe. And that was the main question we tried to tackle with it. We were working on it for about a bit more than a year. and had a few iterations of it. And what made it quite interesting is that it was the right time to do that study, because all certification schemes do have an update, more or less, you could say. So we looked at the relevant 3 schemes in Europe: DGNB, LEED, and BREEAM. It's the current versions, that's the one you see in black, but also the future version, like Zukunftsprojekt Version 2030 from DGNB, but also LEED V5 and BREEAM 7. So that helped us to not only have the status quo on where we are, but also what are the ambitions set. And some of the schemes, it takes a few years to really have an update. So having set at hand was very helpful to compare not only the current, but also the future versions. We also looked at it from an angle of new construction. Obviously, what we try to do is that we try to deal with the existing buildings to make them better and so on. So definitely no doubt about that. But for that study, we looked at new construction, because only then it makes sense to really compare the schemes with each other. Yeah, if there is an interest, maybe we can write them on together on existing buildings or on districts. So there are many more topics you could bring it to. But that study puts the focus on new construction. And we took also in all available updates during the work on the project. BREEAM V6 changed to BREEAM V7. We had quite a lot of exchange also with BREEAM on those versions, and also with our colleagues at Buro Happold being freshly trained or retrained also on the new versions that helped and also influenced that report. On certifications itself, it only makes sense to compare something if you do have a bit of material you can use in comparison. And obviously, we have some experience in quite a lot of different projects, and there's just a few examples. Some are also certified in 2 certification schemes. Some are older, some are newer, but we have all those projects under the belt, and I think it's important to, in each of those schemes, we have over 100 projects we worked on, to be able to really have a comparison. So methodology first, and I mentioned that one, is the drivers. We looked at what are the European drivers that are there. Obviously also the international and UN drivers, but specifically what are the drivers in Europe. Then we looked at what we called fields of transformation. Those we developed as Buro Happold, and I get a bit more in detail on those, on topics that are important for us, like resilience, like sufficiency. And they help also to, put the certification schemes in context to each other, not criteria versus criteria, but on how they contribute to fields of transformation and at the end, a sustainable future. We looked at benchmarks, also, what benchmarks are in there in the transformation field, and we looked at whether they're quantitative or qualitative. That's always part of certification schemes, but how can we define it, and how do the benchmarks we currently have in the schemes translate back in the overarching topics? And then, last but not least, we did on we used selected indicators to look at the 3 certification schemes in regard to the field of transformation. And that gave us a conclusion, and I'm sharing that with you, as that it was quite a lengthy process. It's a quite a report that has a lot of thinking in there, and a lot of materials that we went through, and we also make it very openly accessible, also on what led us to come to certain conclusions. So it's not just to say, well, there is a result, but to also see what the conclusion is and how we got there. So the fields of transformation, and those I think we all more or less can agree on, that those are relevant not only in Europe, but also relevant for the future of construction in Europe and beyond. Especially resilience, especially sufficiency and decarbonizations, all the others you see and none of them is in any of the certification schemes as a criteria in itself, but it's topic that we found are very relevant and that we could and should look from that angle on it. So the outcome, and just not to keep it too long, because we have great discussion hopefully afterwards as well, that's the outcome. It's also, in the version we're going to put online, it will have also a little bit of, more fine grain separation of that one. But what you can see is that we're looking at, okay, so what is future proof already in a European context? And the DGNB scheme looked already at version 2030, but also already in V23 in what's happening there on the European level. What we included for those gourmets that already knows that there is an update to the version 23, version 23.2. We already considered those topics in there as well. And as you see, there is a lot of difference depending on what the angle is and what you put in from the field of transformation. Just to say, target is something from a European level perspective. Yeah, and as you can see, is that like a scheme like LEADS that's put up predominantly international, and we're only, I think, in the latest report, only one country in Europe is included or is on the top 10 applying it. It is an international scheme, and thus not really looking at the European Union. With the PREEM scheme being, the one that's longest on the market also in there, we had good exchange on it, but also with, it's not a specific European focus. So with that, graphic, even so it might be, we can discuss on how far beyond or what actually future-proof is. So in the update we're going to present also, we put in a real definition on why future-proofing. But as you can see, there is a difference, from topic to topic, but the DGNB scheme is pioneering in many ways. So in that to say, Zukunftsversion 2030 is kind of its own. It's hard to compare it with any of the other schemes. So in a finer grain analysis, we also have set apart with also version 23, but it is similar from the result that DGNB scheme is looking at the European, or from a European perspective, it's fulfilling the European requirements, obligations in our future proofings that we have in Europe and in mind for our projects most. So that's a good news, I think, for all the countries that are adopting the DGNB schemes and are working with it, that it is a European scheme. And in my opinion, we need to have a European flag also at some point at one of those meetings to really make that also clear that it is actually fit for purpose in Europe and beyond, but it is something that has Europe at heart and something that's really very well responding to Europe. So last slide I want to show you there. There's a lot more in there on what's been done, what's been looked at. We had a first release at the Expo Real last year with a lot of interest. We took in quite a lot of comments as well on the report, and gonna have really have it online and available as you see it on that image. That's gonna is a cover within a very short period of time. I would say in the next weeks we have that. Please write me an email if you want to have that material already now. I think there's 1 or 2 copyright issues on images, but otherwise it's ready to go. So thanks for the opportunity to present it. There's my email address. If you do have any questions around that, please do. And otherwise, I hope you're going to see it as a download option on the DGNB webpage, at our Buro Happold webpage, and all the other green building councils that I hope will share that finding. And please share also with us your comments, your topics you have, and also very valuable, your experience on projects. So I would give it back to you,
Perfect,
Johannes, and happy for any questions now or later.
Perfect. Thank you, Thomas. This is the blue bars. They look promising, I think. And but looking behind the blue bars, so you showed the fields of transformation. How did you select these fields, and how did you handle the different scope within the rating schemes? So, for example, not having economic dimension in there, in others, and so on.
Yeah. So with the fields, it's a very good question, because with the fields of transformations, that often comes up in our day-to-day projects where we say, actually, we need to do something more here or there, or topics that just, crystallize themselves as being relevant aspects that allow you to talk about certification without going directly into one certification scheme. And so those fields were also where we said, well, in somehow also a hint towards the DGNB, where we say, well, maybe there we can do a bit more, or maybe that's becoming a topic also in an update at some point. So it was that was the main part, but also looking and digesting on what requirements we have from the European Union. that we want to fulfill within, European Union. And so that's where it arrived, but it's coming from our day-to-day practice. The economic component, yes, it's an important one. On that one, we, however, said that we have a bigger focus on the governance and transparency, and that in certain extent also includes an economic component. But very relevant topics we found, and actually you could do more, but the more you do, I think now we have 9 instances, the more you do, the more difficult it becomes to compare individual parts. Yeah, but it's never going to be perfect on whether that's the top 9 and they're going to stay like that. But it's an evolving, and I think, and I was lucky to be in Brussels last year in January to discuss sufficiency. And it was one of the key topics, I think, that we have, and we have that in pretty much all of our meetings. And it's not specifically in all schemes yet.
Yeah, super. Thank you, Thomas, for these answers, and I think we'll come back in the discussion to the study. And when we've seen the fields of transformation, the taxonomy as an instrument to classify finance, sustainable finance, is one of the important aspects also in there. And so in Austria, we have a longer tradition with the taxonomy, and still a hot topic in Austria, what we hear here on the other side of the border. Richard, what do you think? With the new building a new scheme, we have now integrated that completely into the rating scheme. Shouldn't be that a full push for the market in Austria?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for the questions and inviting me to this great panel. So I think from the very beginning, we always saw the taxonomy as a kind of game changer. And talking from the ÖGNI perspective as one of the co-founders and still on the board there, we put the taxonomy at the core of our strategy already a few years ago. If I remember correctly, we went with a verification very early on, and we see the results clearly. I think from the taxonomy perspective, we all know it says follow the money. So as a commercial real estate developer, I fully appreciated that you said, well, that's where we start, and we try to take in all the buildings. So as you mentioned, also the buildings in use. And my company, being headquartered in Vienna, but working throughout the CE region, sees that very clearly. We had a project which we finished during the COVID period, an office building in Budapest. I think it was the first EU verified building there. In the beginning, the banks, and I remember those discussions, they had these regulations, but they didn't really see how can they tackle it. And I think that was the point where the GBCs, or all GBCs, I think, have really a great opportunity to become the networking space or the center of excellence. And that's what I think I can report. And to the viewers who saw Petra before, Petra Kühnel from ÖGNI, who presented where we stand now in Austria with the taxonomy, you see how we are already on the market, how we are following the changes in the European regulations, and how that affects then the mainly financial sector, what we saw. We had a great push, I can see, from our pull, from the banking and insurance world, and we are following up with that, and I think that's the right course to have future changes there.
You have an additional role in the World Green Building Council European Regional Network, ERN. You are vice chair in the network, and so you have a good insight what's going on. And taxonomy is clearly one of the hot topics in all over Europe. Do you see a trend in there, or do you see more a push now to bring that together?
Yes, for sure, because from the World GBC, The reason I'm motivated there is you have this global local magic, right? So you have the global problem of climate change and resources, which we are depleting, especially from our sector. But real estate is by definition local. So in the European regional network, we heard that also before. We see the taxonomy as one as the main elements bringing the different GBCs and also administrations together. We are happy that the network is part of the EU Sustainable Finance Platform now in the third term. And we see its very detailed discussions. And again, in various countries, we know it from DGNB with the regulations on certain subsidies, and similar trends we see in other countries where the taxonomy is still, and in my opinion, will remain a cornerstone for the harmonization, which, in my personal vision, I would see that we find ultimately a European version of taxonomy. And I think that's where the DGNB system is in the forefront. We heard CIPIA is offering now a new model there, and I hope that combining these different experiences from the DGNB network together with the French colleagues of HQE, we can move forward and find really a visionary European system, which is then, as in the DGNB world, adapted to the local standards.
That sounds promising, and so fingers crossed that we can really speed it up and bring more taxonomy in the projects all over Europe and also in Slovenia. In Slovenia, it's a smaller market, clearly, but DGNB is market leader. That's what Robert told me, and we just have 2 lead projects, so I like that. There are reasons for that, and Robert is definitely one of the reasons in the market, being one of the, he was the first auditor for DGNB in Slovenia, and he's active in the complete Balkan region. And in Slovenia, you have a specific situation also with the GPP process, the Green Public Procurement process. Could you explain a little bit how that is organized in Slovenia and why building certification is such an important instrument?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and also thanks for inviting me to this panel. Clearly, I think very important part of the status of certification right now in Slovenia is that we started the process in 2010, so very soon after DGNB started to work internationally also. And just in the beginning, we started to communicate with government and ministry at the beginning. But then after, let's say, a while, it took quite some years that this get now in some way a standard. And in Slovenia, in some way, it was, let's say, it's a country, small market, but I would say looking for environment very strongly. And let's say also the responsible people and ministry recognize that certification can improve buildings, but can contribute to the positive development in the country. And maybe short because let's say that DGNB placed as a European, really European certification scheme, very similar, let's say, also to the practice what we have in Slovenia. It was somehow very logical that a lot of, let's say, processes will be recognized by DGNB, and therefore I think DGNB gets stronger and stronger. And right now, as you mentioned, yes, DGNB is also part of the public procurement system as an option. And now what we see, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say, a lot of investors, private but also public investors, recognize DGNB as a really important tool and as a help also to fulfill all the requirements, which are also coming from Europe and European Commission. And that's I think also very important part. And yes, as I mentioned, maybe a previous work and all the things and explanations and introduction we've done after our 10 years, I would say, now brought us to the point where really a lot of people know DGNB, and what is very important, they trust also the criteria and requirements which are in DGNB.
Super. I mean, this is a great situation, and you have also a good insight into into the other countries in the region, Robert. Do you see similarities in the other countries, or is it still the role model in Slovenia, which could be transported also in the other countries of the region?
I think right now we are a kind of role model in the moment, but similar. I would say the development in Croatia is very positive, and I would say very similar. In some other countries, of course, there are some differences yet, yes, but I think for sure, let's say based on the experience we earned now in Slovenia, we see that also under the line, the investors which are gaining, let's say, the certificate, they are very satisfied at the end, because it helps them really to get finally not just more sustainability in the project, but especially they get better objects. So the money which they are investing into the project I would say it paid off the effort which is done by them, and also from other people who are involved, yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and that's maybe also a preview to the session we have later today when we talk about advantages by certification internationally, where a couple of really great examples are in the discussion. Thanks, Robert, and now looking a little further to China, Rolf, in China, we see another picture. Almost 1/4 of all LEED certifications internationally are in China last year. So what's the plan to catch up?
I think China has... well, first of all, I've been in China for 20 years, and my first DGNB project I actually did in 2013, so more than 10 years ago. So I understand how, or I have seen the market develop, and one key development is that I would say pre-COVID it was very focused on defining sustainability engagement as marketing, or today it would translate into compliance issues. But now we're in a situation where the market has matured. Real estate is regarded differently, is held longer as an asset, and with that comes a lot of different responsibility, and therefore a lot of open-mindedness towards exactly the topics that are in DGNB's DNA. That is a life cycle approach, that is a focus also on cost, on CO2 roadmaps, all of which are key government KPIs and key government targets in China. And what clients essentially are looking for is complexity management and value generation for their building projects. One thing that's a direct overlap with LEED is that DGNB has a system that gives us so many granularity and such a big resolution in terms of its points. We have 3,800 LEED DGNB points versus 110 LEED, and people realize that this is the key in order to generate synergies, and that's what's driving them into systems, into a systems thinking approach, and that is provided by DGNB.
That sounds exciting. What you mentioned with creating values instead of a marketing instrument. Could you describe that a little further in detail? What it means to create value and the process behind?
Yes. So I think first of all, one key thing is that creating value is a very subjective thing. So there is the idea that DGNB reacts on a project-specific basis to the needs of the clients, and I think that's one of the key USPs in the market at the moment. So it starts with integrated design, with variant comparisons early in the process, with creating data, and of course, I think everybody understands the affinity in China for data and digital environments. And so the whole idea of parametric design is held very dear. And the other thing that I found is once we can quantify the parameters that are quantifiable, it's much easier to talk about qualities that are softer in the design. And that essentially lets clients develop their own storyline and create a vision behind which all stakeholders assemble behind, from the general management to finance controller to facility management. And we had this in a project that this allowed us, for example, to even reduce investment costs by smart design of the facade, with creating synergies between shading and solar gains and providing outdoor spaces for the users, all of which is a combination of quantifiable and qualified characteristics. And this translates into visions and into also a facilitation of smarter and more confident decision-making. And that is a complexity management instrument that people need. And that is what they trust in helping them as a toolbox to generate future-proof buildings.
Cool. And what's the hottest project you're working on right now?
Actually, the hottest projects, I think, are on a different level, because now I've talked about value generation, and I'm really just also mean not just only monetary value, and that's part of DGNB to create this, but going beyond project level itself, we have a lot of cooperations just in China currently, and they are all very dynamic in development, and this, I believe, gives a big push to the market and might have results very, very quickly. Just to run through them a little bit, one is with China State Construction. This is the largest general contractor or building company worldwide. And last year we did an in-house training with them with 80 people, essentially based on DGNB consultant course, but with helping them structure their own targets and their own processes already. And again, what they're looking for is the systematic toolbox character of DGNB that lets them plug in what they've been doing and developing anyway into a much more systematic overview that lets them coordinate processes between different departments. And that, I hope, is spinning into pilot projects very soon, and also into a second round of engagement with the different departments. There is another big project that we're launching with CSUS, which is more on the government side, about urban renewal. And this, of course, is one of the key playing fields in China or at the moment, because you can imagine China has their 2030 carbon goals, but the cities are built up, but they've been built 20 years ago, and now they need to undergo renewal in order to meet those targets. And the third one is in Shenzhen with the local Shenzhen Green Building Association, and that actually is a co-creation, so to speak, of using the DGNB system in order to give a face and a scheme and a framework to the so-called Good House initiative in China, which is a government-driven incentive based on safety, comfort, green architecture, and smart building design. And it's lacking the cost dimension, the economic dimension, which we are putting on top of it, and then hopefully putting this together as a synergistic framework between and essentially helping to articulate and implement the targets put forward by the government in a very local setting in Shenzhen and Greater Bay Area. And these projects, I think, are the ones that might really drive high impact multiplication.
That's cool. You already answered my next questions about what's the next step. And this is cool and inspiring to see how knowledge, existing knowledge, is plugged into processes, future processes. In Slovenia, yes, into green public procurement. So the scheme is not designed to do green public procurement, but it's used for it. And in the Good House initiative in China, it's the same picture. It's not designed to use building rating schemes, but building rating schemes like DGNB are perfectly designed to feed them and to bring them in the right direction to be a useful tool for transformation. Coming back to the study Thomas presented, is such a study helpful to highlight USPs, unique selling points within the market, Richard or Robert?
Okay, I will start. For sure, studies like this always helps to get a good overview what is happening, and especially, let's say, maybe even not the comparison between the different schemes, but much more, for example, how in our case DGNB is fulfilling, let's say, the goals made by European Commission. And this is, I think, the most supportive part of studies like this, because sometimes it's very difficult to explain the investors where and how we can help them. But with things like that, yes, it's much easier.
So yeah, from my side as well, I know it's a very, very difficult and complex work. And starting maybe from the global perspective, we say, well, basically all the certificates are good. But with this study, you see how integrated or how they adapt to the local and country-wise needs. And maybe as an add-on, and that's, I think, very interesting for you also, Thomas, that ÖGNI did, that was more a legal study, an expert study, how the ÖGNI DGNB system and taxonomy work together, and whether this verification, etc., works well. And that was specifically aimed to compare with other certifications on the market, a little bit the international ones, for sure, highlighting this huge difference, which, if I understood it correctly, was specifically in the governance issue. And this legal study came to the same conclusion, that a certificate in Austria used a lot by the public administration was in fact not in line with the taxonomy, right? So I thought that was not only a coincidence, but reinforcing the message, which in Austria was highly due to the third-party verification and the target on quality and, I would say, future-proofness. So for sure, very tough work and not easy, because a lot of people will look into it, but very good to evolve and get, in the end, the message through for better buildings for a better future.
Super, happy to hear. Originally, I had the plan to talk with Thomas about the Middle East region. Now we have a different situation in Middle East, and and the war impacting the complete region. Thomas, what do you think? What will be the long-term impact on the built environment in the Middle East region and in these countries which have a hot real estate sector?
Yeah, maybe it just first, or Richard, comment to you. Yes, we know the UGNI report. It's also in as a reference in that report we did. So yeah, definitely important one. So Johannes, on Middle East. So it just had meetings morning on a Middle Eastern project, and obviously there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment from a political side. Nevertheless, if you really look at the Middle East, they are shifting, actively shifting things. There are quite a lot of net zero goals there. So commitments, be it Saudi Arabia, be it UAE and Qatar, have very strong net zero goals. They're actively, working on those. Renewable energy expansion, it's huge, not only in solar but also in regional wind initiatives. There is a lot of economic diversification happening, shifting from oil depending economies to sustainability and to knowledge-based technologies and economies. So there is a lot happening, and all of the ambitions there is there's a lot of testing also. Which I think at the end is always interesting to look at and also to learn from what's happening there on a sustainability side. But all of sustainability needs to have stability. And so I think once stability is regained, there is a lot of lessons learned also in other parts of the world in terms of sustainability.
So you think the raised awareness we see really in the region, also on our side, and we get many different requests, and you see this awareness will also lead into acting for really more sustainability.
And it will be enacting not only at scale but also with with a deep understanding of what can be done and what should be done. And I think we are beyond that stage where it was about the first offs, but there it's really something I think that also the DGNB scheme can bring a big difference because of the the system acting as a tool to make it better. And whether you certify or not certify, it's the end different story. But there, what we've seen also in the report is that as a tool, DGNB is really very helpful and useful. And for sure, I think that there is a lot of not only honesty, but also desire to change things on an energy and sustainability point specifically, where I think that's unprecedented compared to other parts of the world. So it's a lot to learn from.
Super. Thank you, Thomas. And I'm looking for the time. I'm afraid we are going to come to an end. One last question, Rolf, I wanted to ask you. Where do you see the DGNB movement in China within 5 years?
Yeah, I think in a way we are in a situation where this might be the perfect fit, because if you look at China, there's a big understanding for the necessity and the goals of building green. At the same time, there's a trust that this is not just an important issue, but there's a positive drive to it. Sustainability is seen as a potential value creation rather than a requirement that is a negative driver. So this whole positive energy, I think, will translate into a very deep appreciation for the DGNB goals, especially as a toolbox to generate future-proof buildings on the local market and line up with local targets on all levels, from municipality all the way up to government. And that's why I think we'll be looking at a steep growth rate there.
That's cool. A good view into the future, a future-proof future. And Thank you very much, everybody. I think this was a great session. Thank you, Robert, Richard, Thomas, Rolf, for being part of this panel. And I think we got really great insights from the different countries and how the DGNB scheme can contribute to transformation and to the next step we urgently need.